Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2015 version of Tribune Sports Live. I'm Zach Steele, along with my co-host Alan Taylor, a man who needs no introduction around Trussville, a city councilman, president of Bryant Bank, and a guy who's watched a football game or two in his day. Alan, thanks for being with us.
Great to be here, Zach. It's unbelievable that season's already here. Looking forward to another great football year here in the Trussville, Clay, Pinson area.
Alan, you've seen a lot of football games in your day. Can you ever remember a season where we've seen so much talent in all three schools?
Really, I haven't. I mean, it's been a long time since we've seen the level of talent for all three of the schools that we represent here. Hewitt-Trussville, 5, 6, or 7 college prospects. Clay-Chalkville's probably got 2 or 3, 4, and Pinson Valley has a couple more. I don't think I ever can remember all of our schools having that many prospects coming in at the start of a season.
Well, I remember growing up in South Alabama, you might run up on a team where had one guy maybe going to college, and we're going to get the opportunity to see a lot of good talent and blue chip talent. We're talking Stanford, we're talking Missouri, Auburn, Alabama. We have a lot of big-time talent here, and we're going to talk about that in just a few moments. After this quick break, we're going to talk about the Hewitt Huskies.
At Bryant Bank, we focus on you. You'll never have to worry about being just another number in the system. When you're a member of the Bryant Bank family, our Bryant Bankers will work to understand who you are, where you want to go, and how we can help you to get there. We're big believers in developing relationships with our customers, and we value friendships we make along the way. Bryant Bank provides unbeatable service and legendary results. Bryant Bank, member FDIC, and equal housing lender.
Last season, the Hewitt Huskies finished 5-6, but they also had a first-year head coach in Josh Floyd, and he got kind of a late start with his team not arriving until June. So really, 5-6 is a pretty respectable number from last year, Alan.
It really was a great year, especially with the reclassifications and with the new 7A, and really the region that Hewitt-Trussville was in being kind of the SEC of high school football, power conference. The state champion came out of that group, and just some great talent and great competition in that group.
Speaking of great talent, the Huskies have a very talented backfield coming back this year. Quarterback Zach Thomas, running back Jerry and Street, that duo, a couple of blue chip players, a lot of college offers there. Alan, last year the Huskies were new getting into this offense, and now with repetition we expect them to be a lot better.
They should be. When you look at this offense that Josh Floyd has brought and installed here, you think it's complicated. It's really not that complicated. It has a lot of moving parts, but you really run 4, 5, or 6 plays out of this thing that just has a lot of looks. I think last year we had a lot of penalties. I think when you saw our team trying to get used to this new system, you saw a lot of false starts. You saw a lot of wrong formations. And I think that all came with the new. This year, look to see all that ironed out. I think you'll see a much different, more polished team this year than we saw last year.
Well, I think continuity and timing have a lot to do with that. And this team, as you mentioned, had a lot of penalties, especially early on. They still averaged 31, a little over 31 points a game, which is pretty impressive. This year, talented group of young receivers, Grayson Cash, Noah Igbenogany, hard to say. I never get that one right. They lead a talented group of young receivers, and Coach Floyd has talked about he really wants to air it out more and run his very good quarterback less.
When you go back and look at his teams in the past, his state championship teams in Arkansas, one year it would be mostly a run-oriented team. Some years it'd be a more pass-oriented team. That's the beauty of this offense. He can kind of take what they give him. Last year, our quarterback, Zach Thomas, ran the ball 225 times. He had 1,100 yards, but I have to believe Coach Floyd would like to see our quarterback run it less than 225 times this year. He does have good receivers. You mentioned those two guys. They're fast. They're talented. Zach can throw the ball, and I look for Hewitt-Trussville to air it out a little bit more this year than they did in the past, unless the defense don't give them that, and they certainly can run the ball with
Absolutely.
this offense.
So this can be a really balanced offense, and I would say 225 carries is a lot for your starting running back, much less your quarterback. Offensive line, maybe some question marks there. When I talked to Coach Floyd earlier this summer, he said that's the one thing we're not sure about going into this season. They've got a very good anchor to that offensive line in Kyle Miskelly. And the nice thing about this offense, Alan, you and I talked about this earlier this week, is they don't have to be great. They just have to be good.
Well, the power offenses that you see a lot of teams run, you need those big offensive linemen that can blow the holes open. In this offense, it's more of a spread it out. It's a lot of moving parts. And I don't think the offensive linemen have to be quite as big, but they are talented up there. And I think Kyle Miskelly is going to anchor that. They've got some good players up there. I think it's going to be fun to watch them.
You and I watched Jerry and Street from the beginning last year in his first game when they played Gardendale. He looked very green early on in the season, a lot of growing pains for him, but the light kind of came on against Spain Park, and all of a sudden this young man is one of the top running back prospects in the state.
He really is, and his sophomore year I don't think he played very much, and so he comes out, we got new coaches, we got a new offense, and he sees himself all of a sudden getting the ball a lot of times. And I think early in the season, he was a little timid. He didn't run as strong. I think Spain Park was his coming out party. And I'm going to tell you, I remember that game, and I don't believe there was anybody in the state that could have tackled him that night.
No.
He broke loose, had a great game. I think we put up 60-something points that game. And he's a real deal. He's a prospect. I think he's committed to Ole Miss. And so I think we're going to see Jerry and Street play for a lot of years to come.
Well, and one of the things about him that's underrated is his hands and his ability to catch passes out of the backfield. He had a couple touchdown catches last season. I look for him to get more passes out of the backfield from Zach Thomas.
Well, and that's the beauty of this offense. Again, they move around a lot, and you see all the teams that run this offense, you see them throw a lot to backs out of the backfield, and that really gives them another dimension that if you're just running the power eye, you don't have.
One of the things we talked about earlier this week was how much bigger and more physical the players look. This off-season program has been really tough for the Huskies.
It really has. I think it was a rude awakening for some, but they are. They're bigger. They're stronger. They just look more like football players. They've had a rugged off-season. They've had a pretty rugged fall camp. I know I talked to some of them this week, and they're tired of hitting on each other. They're ready to start taking a little bit of this out on some other people.
Well, and one of the things that strong, tough off-season program helps, especially the Husky defense, because we talked about this earlier, and Coach Floyd's talked about this a lot. They may be on the field a good bit longer just because of the nature of that offense, and it helps that they're going to be a little bit more conditioned going into the season.
Absolutely. The one downfall of this offense is when you run the hurry up and you score quickly, is it does get your defense back out there a lot sooner than maybe sometimes they would like. But this defense under Coach Rudy Griffin, he's the new defensive coordinator. He's got those guys flying around. They are better conditioned, and I think you're going to see a lot better Hewitt-Trussville defense this year than you saw last year.
Well, and we talked about the blue chippers on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, Jalen Williams offers from Middle Tennessee State and Navy. Bailey McElwain's got an offer from Stanford, which is a pretty prestigious school in itself, and a perennial, at least in the last few years, perennial top 20 team. So. And then Jason Williams, another senior. They've got a lot of talent on this defensive side of the ball, and Coach Griffin wants them to be more multiple. He said he wants to have different looks, and so you may see Bailey lined up at defensive end some. You may see them walk up a lot more people. It's going to be a different look from this defense, and I think it's going to help.
It really is. They're bigger. Their linebackers are just going to be outstanding, I think, this year. We had the Smith kid that moved over from Leeds that's going to will be one of the anchors on the defensive line. He's a real deal. I think he's going to be a junior this year. He was an all-state player last year at Leeds, and he's back. His family's back in Trussville, and he's going to help us out there. The linebacking core is just going to be solid. They are much bigger this year than they've been in the past years, and I think that's going to help. But not just bigger, but they're also quick. They're fast, strong. So it's going to be interesting to watch them. I think the big question is going to come in the secondary, though. We lost some players there, and I think that's kind of what they're working now to shore up.
Well, they lost Deontay Wilson, who was the third leading tackler his senior year, was the leading tackler his junior year, and a lot of experience in that secondary goes away with him and some of the other players that have graduated. That's going to be, I think, the big question mark going in. Can they cover these receivers that they're going to play? And maybe they'll get a little bit of help from this newfound depth in the defensive line. Maybe they can get a little bit more of a pass rush and help out with that. And the question that we really have to ask is, how good does this unit have to be? Coach Floyd was talking about it. In this age of offense, what's good enough? Holding your opponent to 20 points a game, maybe that's good enough. The Huskies averaged over 31 points a game. I think they gave up around 33 points a game last year. If they can get that number down, just one touchdown, that's a pretty big difference.
Well, and it is. When you think about in high school football, when you're playing the likes of Hoover and you're playing the likes of Clay Chalkville and some of these perennial powerhouses, you think if we score 31 points, we ought to be winning the game. And last year we scored in the 30s and we lost some ball games. And so I think this defense, and I don't know what the number is. I don't know how little is too little or how much is too much. But I think you're going to see this defense really step up this year. Hopefully, we'll hold them under 30 points, which we did in a couple of games last year.
Well, if you can do that, you're going to win a lot of games just based on as good as the offense is.
Right.
The other question mark for the Huskies, T.J. McGettigan, the 4-year starter, is now gone, kicking at West Alabama. Got some question marks in the kicking game. We're assuming Zach's going to continue doing the punting, which was actually a pretty valuable weapon for that team last year because teams had to defend him as a runner when they'd line up in formation. It looked like what could be a passing play on fourth down, and a few times Coach Floyd rolled the dice, and it was. So that's an interesting aspect with this Husky special teams, Zach Thomas being the punter.
Well, special teams is always big, and in 7A football, special teams are going to win you some games. And that's why when you watch this team, and they did at their scrimmage last Friday night, they did some special team stuff. But it's not just something the Huskies take lightly. You look out there, they got some starters. They got some offensive and defensive starters that are playing special teams, and they're doing that because that's a huge part of the success of this type of offense, this type of program. So you're going to see some guys on special team that you're going to see playing offense and defense. You're going to see them flying around out there. I think Zach Thomas did a great job punting last year, probably one of the leading punters in our conference, and I think that is a nice weapon to have him back there so that we can maybe fake one here or there, or if not, he punched the ball real well.
The Huskies' opening opponent, Montgomery Bell out of Nashville, Tennessee, a school that you and I could not have gotten into.
Right.
Very prestigious academic school, but also very well known for their football prowess. They've won 14 state championships in the last 70 years in Tennessee, and they have probably the best running back prospect in the country in Jordan Wilson.
This is a good football team. Coaches have different philosophies. Do you open up with someone a little weaker and try to get all the things ironed out? Trussville's not opening up with somebody weak. Montgomery Bell is the real deal. 14 state champions. They've got what I've heard is not only the best running back, but the junior Jordan Wilson, Ty Chandler. Yep. He is could be the top player in the country coming out next year. Great running back. They have the Jordan Wilson that's a tight end that's committed to UCLA. This is a good team, and they're going to come in here, and it's a private school in Tennessee, but they're going to come in here, and this is going to be a big test for Trussville right out of the gate.
Well, it is, and it's a defending state champion from Tennessee in their division, so we're looking at a challenge in that first ball game. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Clay Chalkville Cougars. Can they repeat as state champions? Are they going to be better than they were in that record-setting season in 2014? We'll talk about that in just a couple of moments.
Trussville Vision Care.
2014 was one of those dream years for the Clay Chalkville Cougars. They won the state championship, 15-0, set all sorts of offensive records, and guess what? Most of this offense is back, and they look nasty, Allen.
Absolutely. And this didn't happen by accident. Jerry Hood is a good football coach. He's had success in a lot of places. He has come to Clay a few years ago. He has built a program, and they are good. They're good on offense. They're big and bad on defense, and they're well coached. This is a good team.
Ty Pigram, the quarterback, who's now a big-time prospect, came out of nowhere basically last year. He burst onto the scene. Remember that ESPN game? They're playing Niceville, Florida, and nobody had heard of this kid. And by halftime, everybody knew who this young man was. And he's back again as one of the top quarterback prospects in the state. You know, is it possible that this team could be better than they were last year?
Well, it's going to be difficult to be better than you were last year, this team. But they really don't have to be better to compete in 6A because they were a great football team last year. Ty Pigram he's the real deal as a quarterback. He can run, he can throw, he has good vision, and I think the biggest thing, and this is I've talked to Coach Hood before, he's a leader. The kids respond to him, they follow him, and he really is the guy out there, the field general that leads this team.
Well, and he's got a couple of really good players to throw to as well. Alabama commit T.J. Simmons, 43 receptions last year for 965 yards, scored 20 touchdowns as a junior. Had a nice article about him in the paper today talking about how he used to be a bit of a cut-up, kind of a problem child. His mom yanked him out of the school he was in, brought him to Clay Chalkville, and now he says, you don't screw around with Coach Hood because you're going to be flipping tires all day. This young man, went from kind of a prankster to now he's a blue chip prospect.
Well, he is really a good player, and I kid Coach Hood, and he and I have been friends a long time, with Pigram at quarterback and Simmons and also Nico Collins that we'll talk about at receiver. I'm not sure I couldn't coach that team. Mm-hmm. That is some talented players, and I'm sitting here wondering, how did one team get so many, I think, blue chip players at one time? These are good football players, and they got some other to go with it.
Well, you mentioned Nico Collins, 4-star prospect as a junior, got offers from every SEC school, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, offers coming in from all over the country. And Pinson transfer Desmond Williams, who was one of their leading receivers, is now in the mix. This offense, they averaged 48 points a game last year. I mean, what's the ceiling for this offense?
Well, I don't know that there is one. This is going to be an offense that's going to be very difficult to defend. Again, these great receivers, they also have good running backs, and they don't have all the moving parts that some of these spread offenses has. But Jerry Hood, again, a very good coach. He runs an offense that fits these guys. They're powerful. They throw it around, has some moving parts to it. They're going to be very difficult to defend.
Well, we already talked about how innovative Josh Floyd is at Hewitt-Trussville, but give Jerry Hood credit because when you watch his teams play, they have so many different formations they can hit you out of. They may be power eye one play, they may be spread the next, and that's a really hard team to defend, especially when you have this much talent on that side.
Well, it is. The proof is in the pudding. Last year, 48 points a game. It's difficult to score that many points a game. I don't care what kind of offense you're running, but they put the points on the board. They also score quick. You look at them, they're big, they line up, they're intimidating, and you think this team's going to, 3 clouds or 3 yards, 4 yards in a cloud of dust. This team can hit deep, quick. They can score quick. A number of times last year, first or second play, they go all the way, and that's hard to stop.
You look up and you're down 3 touchdowns already in the first quarter.
Absolutely.
And that's in the Hewitt game versus Clay last year, the game was tied at halftime, and I think Clay had 35 unanswered points in the third quarter. It was just an absolute barrage from them, and they scored so quickly. It was just amazing.
Well, and that's the hardest thing. That's again, they'll run the ball, they'll lull you to sleep, but they can score quick. They can strike really quick, and so that's what they did the second half against Hewitt-Trussville last year. Tie game, and they struck quick. They came out throwing the ball around, and they have that ability.
Now, they do have a question mark or two on defense. They lost 9 starters off of a pretty good defense last year, But the coaching staff over there says, you know what, our defense, all these guys have a chip on their shoulder because all they hear about is how good the offense is.
Well, a lot of times in these high-powered offense, that's what you hear, and sometimes these defensive players do have a chip on their shoulder. Jerry Hood is a defensive coach. That's how he made his living. He understands what it takes to build a physical defense. They did lose 9 starters, and that's tough to overcome. But let me tell you, he had some other players. He played a lot of players last year, and don't look for much of a let-up in the defense at Clay.
Well, it always seems like defensively with their talent, he puts a lot of talent on that side of the ball. You can tell when you just watch them line up, they've got a lot of talent on that side of the ball. They've got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, and they are really, to me, one of the top teams in any division in Alabama. And I'll throw them out there with Hoover. Any of these teams that we talked about. I watched Hewitt play back-to-back Hoover and then play Clay Chalkville, and honestly, I was more impressed with Clay Chalkville.
Well, I believe without any doubt that Clay Chalkville could have won the 7A state championship last year. They were that good. Again, they were solid on defense. They were good on offense. That offense is back. It's even stronger. The defense is going to be the question mark, but don't be surprised if we get down to December and Clay Chalkville's playing in that championship game again.
They start their season off in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, against Blackman High School, a team that made it to their quarterfinals in their division in Tennessee last year. So they're going to be on the road before they get back home and get into their region schedule.
Well, that's a fun game for the fans. It's fun to travel and go to a place you hadn't been and play a team you don't know much about. It's more of a challenge for the coaches, and also as you travel with a team of high schoolers to kind of keep them focused on the tasks they got at hand. But that'll be a great first game again, just as Trussville's got an out-of-state team for that first game. This is a great game for the fans, and it'll be a test to kind of see for Clay Chalkville to see where they are.
When we return, we'll talk about the Pinson Valley Indians, 5-6 in 2014 and looking to improve this season.
At Bryant Bank, we focus on you. You'll never have to worry about being just another number in the system. When you're a member of the Bryant Bank family, our Bryant Bankers will work to understand who you are, where you want to go, and how we can help you to get there. We're big believers in developing relationships with our customers, and we value friendships we make along the way. Bryant Bank provides unbeatable service and legendary results. Bryant Bank, member FDIC, and equal housing lender.
Pinson Valley beat writer Kyle Parmley joins me to talk about the Pinson Valley Indians. Kyle, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so Pinson Valley last year, 5-6, did make the playoffs. What are their expectations coming into this year?
Well, we've heard Coach Glover talk a few times about wanting the expectation to not just be to get to the playoffs every year, but he wants to get past that, and he wants to expect to get past that every year. But as we're going to talk about, it's going to be a tough road this year. You know, they went 5-5 in the regular season last year, which was good enough to get to the playoffs, and we'll see if they can get there again this year.
They have a young quarterback, Jackie Matthews, good name. 3-2 as a starter. He was a 14-year-old playing quarterback in 6A high school last year, and I love some of the quotes from the coaches. Last year he was a kid with no clue. This year he's a guy who owns the offense.
Right, he was a baby-faced as you get last year. He's a lefty, which I like. It looks a little different than what you normally see, but and there's not too many guys you can say about he's a returning sophomore starting quarterback. So with all the talent that he's got, you know, they're expecting a big jump from year 1 to year 2 with him.
And what else are we expecting from this Pinson Valley offense?
Well, Coach Glover said at Media Days a couple weeks ago that this is going to be tough because the last several years they've had a star on offense, most notably Nick Gibson at the running back spot. And they're going to have to find a way to replace him this year. They've got a few guys in the backfield that they're hoping can kind of work together to team up to maybe get close to the numbers that Gibson had. But Coach has been realistic in realizing that, you know, it's not going to – more than likely it's not going to get to the point that Gibson had last year. And, you know, Matthews is going to have some help at the receiver spot. Desmond Williams was a key contributor for them for the past couple years. He transferred out to Clay. But he's got a couple guys in Lee Allen Daly, who was a freshman last year, and also Arius Collins, who started last season as their quarterback. He's going to be a good playmaker at receiver. So, We'll see. They've got a couple guys that are young, like Matthews, like Daly, that really have an opportunity to step up and be big parts of this offense.
Coach Glover talked a little bit about wanting his team to be more consistent and really, I would say, emotionally consistent, because they would come out in games or quarters of games and they'd be flat. And a lot of times when you're playing the schedule that they play, that's going to be you really need to come out ready to go.
They really do. And, I think that's what he's aiming for this year, is to be a more consistent group, the same effort day in, day out, and from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. And I think he's going to be able to do that this year because, like I said, not having that star player like a Nick Gibson, or in the past they've had guys like Ernest Robinson at the receiver position, Zach Cunningham at linebacker, without having that one guy that going into the season is going to be the guy, I think it really is going to force them to become a more well-rounded team. And hopefully they'll see that, just to come together as a team and to be able to be consistent, like you said.
Now, who anchors this team defensively?
It's kind of funny to lead into that. Coach Glover at Media Days brought 2 linemen with him. Most coaches bring at least a skill player on offense with them. Coach Glover brought 2 linemen. Turner Shankles is the offensive line center, and defensively, DJ Gregory anchors at defensive line as a senior. And he talked about just really being a leader for that defense, just kind of stepping up their performance from past defenses. And like we've talked about, not having that go-to star, but to really, hold down the fort defensively.
So let's look at this schedule for a moment. I was just perusing through this today, and I took a look at it, and I was just amazed. You've got Hartselle. They open with Hartselle at home, a team that's perennially a quarterfinal or semifinal type team. Aniana, a powerhouse in 4A. You get a break with Woodlawn,
right,
but then you enter a pretty tough row with Gardendale, who was a very good team last year. Clay Chalkville, we all know about Clay Chalkville. Then McAdory, another pretty good team year in and year out. Huffman, you never know what you're going to get with Huffman. Centerpoint's been good lately. Shades Valley, a team that was very good last season as well. And you finish with Minor, who beat 7A Hewitt in the spring game last year.
Well, the way I see it, they went 4-2 in their region last year, which was a very, very nice job for them. Their 2 losses being to Gardendale, to Clay Chalkville, which they have back-to-back right in the middle. But the way I look at it, if they can get past that brutal 3-game stretch of Gardendale, Clay Chalkville, and McAdory, they finish with 4 games in Huffman, Centerpoint, Shades Valley, and Minor that are winnable. So if they can survive the first half of the season, there's the potential in this schedule to possibly make a run towards the end and, hopefully get that playoff berth like they had last year.
Well, Kyle, we thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you more this season.
All right, plan to do it. Thanks, Zach.
We'll be back with predictions in just a couple of moments. We'll hear what Alan Taylor has to say about what he thinks about the upcoming seasons for Hewitt, Clay, and Pinson Valley, along with predictions for the games on Friday night.
Trustful Vision Care.
All right, it's prediction time, Alan. Let's start with Pinson Valley. How do they fare this season overall, and then tell me about Friday night.
Well, I look for Pinson to have another good, solid season. But as y'all mentioned in your report, they got a tough schedule, and a young team, young quarterback. He does have some experience, but it's a tough schedule. They have a tough middle section of their schedule, and their first game, Hartselle, is going to be tough too. Pinson Valley has Hartselle at home. They lost a tough one to Hartselle last year. I look for Pinson Valley to rebound in a close one and beat Hartselle.
So they were 5-5 last year. You're expecting maybe a little bit better, about the same?
No, I think you're going to see a little bit better this year. Again, if they can get through that middle part of the season, I look for them to maybe win 7-8 ball games.
Very good. All right, now the easy one, Clay Chalkville. 15-0, right?
15-0. I'll be surprised if Clay Chalkville don't repeat. They are just loaded with talent. Defense, as we talked about, is a question, but I really think they've just got a really, really good football team. Going to Murfreesboro for that first game against Blackman High School, a good team, kind of keeping kids focused as they travel and something they're not used to. That's going to be a challenge for Coach Hood and the coaching staff. But I just believe Clay Chalkville has too much. Don't know a lot about Blackman, but I'm just telling you, if they're as good as Clay Chalkville, they're going to be a good team. I look for Clay Chalkville to win that one and probably win them all again this year.
I like Clay Chalkville big in that one as well. All right, the Hewitt Huskies. Kind of a hard team to predict for the season, not because of the team, but because of the league they play in.
Well, I think the key for the Huskies this year, Coach Floyd's got his staff in place. They've been here to start this season. They've been here a whole year. They've kind of had their program in for now for 12 months. Last year, they had 2 months to get a team ready. It was a new offense. It was really a new look on defense, and they just didn't have a lot of time. They have that time this year. I think you're going to see the Huskies improve over last year. Again, they play in the toughest region in Alabama football, and every single week you have a chance to lose a football game. Typically, you think back over history, there's always been a couple of teams in your region that you just knew you could win those games. If you showed up and you did the right things, you could win those games. It's not true in this region. They have a chance to lose every football game. But I'm going to tell you, I think this team is going to respond to these coaches. I think you're going to see a different Hewitt-Trussville team this year than he did last year. Start with Montgomery Bell is not going to be easy, but look for them to go up there with a little chip on their shoulder, too, this year. I think they'll take care of business as Montgomery Bell comes here. I think they'll take care of business. And I look for the Huskies to surprise some folks this year.
Very good. I like the Huskies deep into the playoffs this year in 7A. I also like them by a couple of touchdowns against this team, Montgomery Bell, coming up Friday. That's our show for tonight. We'll be back next week. We'll be reviewing all the games and then previewing the following week's games. For Alan Taylor, I'm Zach Steele. Good night, everybody.